In the previous lesson, we looked at the Antichrist, the beast that we found in Revelation 13 and also in Daniel 7. And as I said, that even beasts have friends, and they themselves also call the beast. And that is, in this particular lesson, we look at the beast of Revelation 13, verse 11. Revelation 13, verse 11 has a second beast coming up out of Revelation 13. But to start off, let's just quickly go and recap the first beast that we found in Revelation 13. The one that came up out of the sea, the one that had 10 horns, it looked like a leopard, had paws of a bear, the face of a lion, and we've referred to it a number of times in our lessons before. And we look at the first 3 verses of Revelation 13. It said, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw and a beast rose up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon the horns 10 crowns, and upon the heads the names of blasphemy." Continues there and with verse 2, and it says, "And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and it had the feet of a bear, the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power." So the dragon, which we know because of Revelation 17 is Satan, gives this beast its power, and his seat, and his great authority. And then the final verse of those 3 verses, "And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast." That was the beast that we looked at in our previous lesson. How that the whole world wonders after this beast. But then we find a few verses further on that Catholicism does not work alone. It has a partner. It has a friend. Let's have a look at verse 11. "And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth." Remember, the first one came out of the sea. This one comes out of the earth. "And he had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spake as a dragon." So this verse 11's beast, it has 2 little horns like a lamb, it speaks like a dragon, and it comes out of the earth. Well, when we looked at Revelation 17 verse 5, we could see the symbolism of water. The waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So whenever it's describing water and a beast coming out of water, the beast comes out of a densely populated area where there are many people, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So it's very easy to see that maybe this other beast that comes out of the earth does not, well, first of all, obviously does not come from the same area, and secondly, probably comes from an area which was sparsely populated, very few people. Remember always, and you will find it a number of times within Revelation, water being many people, and then earth obviously being where you do not find multitudes, peoples, nations, and tongues. Revelation 13 verse 11, it comes up out of the earth. Now, this animal, this beast of Revelation 13 verse 11, is maybe a little bit more difficult to describe because it's a very short piece. With the Antichrist, we had all of Daniel 7 and all of Revelation 13 to try and help us identify this beast. But this one, there are just a few characteristics, so we have to look at them very carefully. Also, I do want to mention, as you look at the pictures that are used on the slide, within these slides, we do not really know how this beast looked. This is just an artist's impression of this particular beast. The only thing that we do know of this beast is that it has 2 small lamb-like horns, as far as the actual description of the beast goes. So we do not know if it looked like a ox or a ferocious lion or whatever. It doesn't describe, John doesn't describe this particular beast. It doesn't seem to be important in that sense. What seems to be important is the fact it comes from the earth, has lamb-like horns, and it does speak like a dragon. these little horns, very interesting little horns. And we will come back to them in a moment. Let's have a look at verse 15 and 16 of Revelation 12. We're just moving a little bit back, because here again we're going to find the concept of the earth as opposed to water. The serpent cast out of his mouth, the serpent, Satan, cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, and this particular use of the word woman seems to be a wife, a married person, so it can be a bride, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood or of the destruction. That particular Greek word of flood there, also referring to the word destruction. So the serpent wants to destroy the woman, and he causes this destruction to follow the woman. But what happens? The earth, wherever this animal is coming out of Revelation 13 verse 11, it also comes out of the earth. This earth helps the woman, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of its mouth. So what we do know of Revelation 13:11 and that animal, the beast that comes out of the earth, that this earth must be there to also help the woman, the bride, the church of Christ, the church of God. Let's have a look at some more of the distinguishing characteristics of this particular beast of Revelation 13 verse 11. It uses the word coming up. Now, if we go back to the Greek, it was a single word, and we look at the actual meaning of the word, anab ohino, and it means to silently, unnoticed, quickly, to rise up. It comes up silently, quickly, unnoticed, almost unnoticed. And so this particular power, which is described by this beast of Revelation 13 verse 11, must come up very quickly, quietly, almost unnoticed, and definitely unnoticed to be a beast. And what does this beast do? Verse 12 tells us, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. The terminology here, before him, we will also look at exactly what that word before means. But this beast exerciseth all the power of the first beast. So we know that he comes up out of the earth, and this earth must also help the woman. And we know that he has little lamb-like horns, and that he has all the power of the first beast. Let's have a look at the concept of these horns, these little lamb horns. Maybe to try and find out exactly what it means, let's go all the way back to Deuteronomy 33 verse 17. What's the purpose of these horns? And his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them he will push the people together to the ends of the earth. So the purpose of these horns is to push the people together to the very ends of the earth. We have another quotation there, Revelation 5 verse 6. It says, and I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, there stood a lamb. Remember, those were horns, but they were horns of a lamb. This lamb, of course, we know is Jesus Christ. And stood a lamb as it was slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes. And what was the purpose of this? Which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. So even these eyes and horns of Christ, or of this lamb, where Christ is the lamb, the purpose is to spread it through all the earth. Now I want to pause here for a moment, and I want to draw your attention to the concept that I do not want you to be worried that it uses similar terminology to describe beasts and also Christ. It says in Revelation that Christ is the Lamb, and not only Revelation, many other places also. in the Scripture, especially in the the four Gospels. And Christ is the Lamb. When it comes to Revelation, and also if we look at the concept actually of a lion, we will find that he is the Lion of Judah. That was in Revelation 4. And then we find that Satan walks around like a roaring lion. Do not be worried. It says he walks around like a roaring lion. He can only imitate Christ. Christ is the Lion of Judah, but Satan wishes to be, so he walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So the fact that the similar terminologies are sometimes used, read them very carefully and see if it is a lamb or just has little horns like a lamb. This is not the lamb. This is not Christ. This is a different beast. Let's continue with this beast. And if we continue with the following slide, we will notice that this beast, then with his little lamb-like horns, and the fact that he can also speak like a dragon, he exerciseth all the power of the first beast. And we also looked at, or we're going to look at the concept of before, the little word before. Let's just read that 12 to 14. Revelation 13, 12 to 14. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and we'll come back to that, and causeth the earth and them that which dwell therein to do what? Now he causes them to worship the first beast, the one that was found in Revelation 13, verse 1, whose deadly wound was healed. So the purpose of the second beast is to force all the earth and to push with those little horns to the ends of the earth and cause everybody to worship the first beast, the Antichrist, found in Revelation 13, verse 1. So now we know what the purpose of this beast is, and we need to scratch a little bit deeper to see if we can find who this beast is. And he doeth great wonders, continuing with the previous slide, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven and to the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth, by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by the sword and did live. Do you remember our lesson when we looked at Daniel chapter 3 and Revelation 13, making an image to the beast? Well, apparently, it's this animal, this beast in Revelation 13, verse 11, that pushes the whole world to make this image to the Antichrist that came before it. If we look at the various characteristics then of this second beast, we will find the following. First of all, it comes up out of the earth. It's very important. We will find, if we do a complete study of Revelation 12 and 13, that it must arrive after the 1260-year prophecy. We find that it must appear quietly and peacefully. It must help save the woman, and it must have lamb-like qualities. Who would this beast be? Well, maybe again I should first make a proclaim in my opinion, and then see if my opinion is actually factual or not. First of all, John Wesley says in 1754, he was studying the same piece of scripture, and he says, he has not yet come, though he can't be far away, because he must come at the end of the 42 months, or the end of the 1260-year prophecy. So John Wesley in 1754 realized that this beast, though he hasn't appeared, and John Wesley couldn't find him, he had studied the scripture well enough to know that he must appear very soon. I personally believe, and as we start looking deeper into these characteristics, that it can be none other than America itself, and we will see why as we continue with this lesson. Firstly, let's have a look how America came into power. In 1775, the struggle for independence begins. Notice the very short and rapid time period that is going to follow over here. 1776, America declares herself independent. 1783, Britain recognizes this independence. In 1787, the framework of the Constitution is laid down. 1789, the Constitution of America is accepted. In 1791, the basis for freedom is laid down. In 1798, remember that was the year that France captured the Pope, and it was the end of the 1260-year prophecy. And also then in 1798, we find that this was the time when France recognizes America's independence. So America appears silently out of nowhere, very rapidly, at the right time in history. No other power seemed to appear at that particular time. But let's have a look what some of the quotations say. It says, I believe that the United States as the world's only superpower and the Holy See as the only worldwide moral political sovereignty have significant roles to play in the future. Their actions will impact the lives of people in all parts of the globe. Quotation there, given by who? By the US ambassador to the Vatican. Even though the Vatican is no more than just a few hectares, United Nations of America even has an ambassador at Vatican, an independent country, the world's smallest country. And we notice that there's a very close tie between America and the Vatican. Notice that it had two horns like a lamb. We've already spoken about that. Now, what are the lamb-like qualities of America? Does it have lamb-like qualities? Well, if you look at the Bill of Rights, you will notice a number of things. Firstly, within the Bill of Rights, in the First Amendment, it has very beautiful, soft, lamb-like qualities. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Remember, they had come, the Christians had fled away from Europe where they were being persecuted by Catholicism, and now they're within the new constitution, they say freedom of religion, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of people to peacefully assemble. So, if you look at this First Amendment, and we're not going to look at the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment, but even in the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment, very beautiful lamb-like qualities built right into, entrenched into America's Bill of Rights. So America very definitely did have little lamb-like horns. It has lamb-like speech. It arrived at the end of the 1260-year prophecy. Did America help the women? Of course, America helped Christ's church, God's church. When persecution was at its severest in Europe, and the flames are burning high in France, the Christians, the Protestants, fled by thousands and millions to various parts of the world, and especially to America. The uninhabited part. Remember, America was very sparsely populated, hardly compared to Europe, which was densely populated. Yes, there were already some inhabitants in America, but it was not densely populated like Europe. There were open prairies, and this sparsely populated area assisted the woman, helped the woman or the church by allowing a free place to live, to assemble, and to begin a new nation. 13 verse 11 again, and I beheld another beast come up out of the earth with two horns like a lamb, and it spake as a dragon. So while this lamb-like horns are maybe a way to fool us, we notice very clearly that the speech is not like a lamb. It speaks like a dragon. I also mentioned to you regarding that little word before. He exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. It does not refer to the first beast that was before him in the sense of standing in a row. I'm standing in front or second and you are before me. It means in the presence of the first beast. So here we have America in the presence of Rome doing all of these things. In fact, if we read Revelation 13 very carefully, it was the dragon that gave its power to the first beast. And when the second beast arises, it is the one that moves the whole world to follow the first beast. A holy or unholy trinity. The dragon, the first beast, the second beast. But how will America, after speaking such lamb-like things within its Bill of Rights, be forcing the world to follow the Antichrist? Well, you see, slowly there has to be a breaking down of the wall between church and state. Because as long as that law stands very clearly, there will be freedom of religion. Is that wall being broken down? Is America looking at breaking down that wall? Well, there are certain people that definitely have that idea. This group may sound like a very radical group, but they are not small by any means. The New Moral Army in America. In the Cosmopolitan of May 1995, stated their concept of America. It says, first of all, the removal of religious freedom should be something to be looked at. And, of course, mixed in with very good things also, no abortion. It brings back the death penalty. It has a very radical concept of enslaving to replace prisons. And then, of course, the beauty of it, an autocratic, not democratic, an autocratic Christian government. This is not a small group in America. This is a large group in America fighting for these rights. If we continue, we find that Keith Fernier says the following. Yes, there is a wall that has been erected in our beloved land, America. Its attempt of religious freedom has resulted in greater devastation. It says the fact that it tried to bring in religious freedom actually had a greater negative impact on America. It is the so-called wall between church and state. And then he goes on calling for this wall to be broken down. Church and state must unite again. They must reunite so that the government can have full power over the church also. Dr. Baskin-Robbins, not a very unknown person at all in America. He's quite well known in America. There is a class of person, and notice his thinking, in this country that refuse to keep the Christian Sabbath, namely Sunday, except they be forced. And now he has a plan how to do this. He says this can easily be done. We are 20 million, excluding women and children, that keep Sunday holy. And if we say that we will neither buy nor sell from them, that we will neither be employed or employ them, we can eradicate this apostasy, and the whole world will keep Sunday holy. Does that sound as if America is slowly trying to push the whole world to follow the Antichrist and not to have religious freedom anymore? And we will notice slowly how the law changes time and time again. With every event that happens in America, the law changes to take away freedom from the American nation. When we look at the great papal system, it's difficult to believe that this great system can really be what we have already said it to be. However, if we look at 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 10 and 11, we see how it's possible for the whole world to be deceived. Because it says, because they receive not the love of truth, for this cause God shall send them a strong delusion that they should believe a lie. See, Christ has given us His Word. And He's given us all the information that we need to carry us through until He returns to fetch us. But because they did not love the truth, because Protestantism, even following after Catholicism, believes that these commandments of God can either be changed or they're not valid anymore. And so God sends a deception, a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. It is possible that a great group of people can strongly be following a lie because God sends a strong delusion because they did not want to follow or love the truth. Revelation 17 verse 4, we find the harlot, the woman riding on a beast. And we find that she is again associated with the Antichrist. And as you read through all of Revelation 17, and starting at 13 and all the way through to 17 and parts of 18, that there is a very, very close connection in all its imagery that is used. Revelation 17 verse 14 says, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of the abominations and filthiness of her fornications. She's arrayed in what colors? Purple and scarlet, purple and red. Well, maybe it was just by chance that we noticed in that one slide that purple and red is a very popular color when it comes to Catholicism. But let's not try and read too much into that, although it does seem to be a color of choice within Catholicism. But let's look at the contrast between this woman and the curtain that separated the holy and the most holy within the old tabernacle system. Because that curtain was also made of purple and scarlet. However, it had another color woven into it. If we look at Exodus 26 verse 1, it says that that curtain is to be made of blue and purple and scarlet. So here's one additional color. If you want to move from the holy to the most holy, blue and purple, at least purple and red or purple and scarlet is not enough. There is also blue. What would blue represent? Scarlet or red. There are various verses in the Bible referring to the blood of Christ. There are the verses that refer to, though your sins be as scarlet, they'll be washed as white as snow. And there are many verses, and it's also a very obvious symbolism. The blood being red, being Christ shedding His blood for you and me. There are various verses in the Bible that look at purple as being a royal color. And again, that it's even in today's terms, purple is still a very royal color. But what does blue mean? Where does blue come from? Well, in Numbers, blue is mentioned 5 or 6 times throughout the all of Numbers. And every single time, except for the last time, it seems to be attached to something to do with the temple. Notice that even though a lot of the furniture was made of gold within the temple, the sanctuary of God, blue played a very important role. Numbers 4 verse 6. and shall put thereon the covering of badger skins, and shall spread over it a cloth wholly of blue. This was when they wanted to transport the Ark of the Covenant. And we go on and we look at some of the other verses. And the table of showbread had a spread of cloth of blue upon it. And if we look at the candlesticks, when this also had to be transported, it was covered with a cloth of blue. Blue, blue, blue. It seems to be very important in God's house, in the temple of God, in the sanctuary of God. Numbers 4:11, and upon the golden altar they shall spread a cloth of blue. So what does this blue symbolize the whole time? The fifth quotation over there, and they shall take all the instruments, not only those big pieces of furniture, but even the cups and all the other things used within the sacrificial system, and they shall cover them with a cloth of blue. So Christ seems to have something which is important when it comes to blue. And the last verse in Numbers gives us, or the last verse where blue is mentioned, gives us that answer. Numbers 15, verse 38 and 39. Here God gives an instruction and says to Israel, speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they will make them the fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. Why? Verse 39 will give us the answer. And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon this blue cloth, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them. And notice the rest of this verse. And that ye seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go a-whoring. So it's trying to implement blue so that you do not become part of the prostituting of Revelation. Carry something blue upon your garments, so that you will remember the commandments of the Lord. No wonder we don't find blue within the harlot. Remember what was found in the most holy, in the Ark of the Covenant, right inside the Ark of the Covenant? The commandments of God. And so, when there's no blue, it means that there's no keeping of the commandments of God. She does not like the woman in Revelation 17 to adhere to the commandments of God. What does Numbers 15, verse 40 and 41 say? That you may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy unto your God. He says, I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, to be your God. I am the Lord your God. That ye may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy unto God. You see, it is God that brings us out of bondage. It was God that brought Israel out of Egypt. It's God that gave us the commandments, the ones that He said that nothing will change before heaven and earth pass away. Not one single bit of my commandment will change. And that is why God in His temple includes blue, purple, and red. But the woman that we looked at, forming part of this whole Antichrist scenario, she only has purple and red. She does not keep the commandments of God. We spoke about the color, the blood of Christ, the scarlet color, the blood that is shed for you and me. We also looked at the concept of God's commandments being blue. And when you mix blue and red, you get purple. You see, it is impossible to only say, I accept the blood of Christ, but I don't want to follow His commandments, and yet hope to become a royal child of God. It is impossible to keep God's commandments without accepting what Christ did for us at the cross and hope that we will become a royal child of God. It has to be the combination. We are saved by grace, but we are judged by our works. We're not saved by our works. We're judged by our works. We're saved by grace. Christ died at the cross for us. That is, we have to accept that. We accept that Christ's blood cleanses us from all unrighteousness. And because of the love response, what did Christ say? If you love me, keep my commandments. Because of that love response, we then keep the commandments, symbolized by the color blue. And when we combine that, we become a royal child of God. You see, Christ did everything he could. Christ came down from heaven, from the presence of God, all the way to this earth, and died for you and me. That part has been done. And if it was not for that, you and I would be lost forever. In response, God is asking, He says, don't be satisfied like the prostitute, the whore in Revelation 17, with only red and purple, because red cannot make purple. He says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Make sure that there's blue also within your life. And mix those two colors. And become a child of God, a royal child of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. If we want to be a child of God, we need to, in response to what He has done for us, out of love, as He asked, keep His commandments. It's embedded in all of Revelation. I trust as we look at the last few of the DVDs left, that it will bring a complete picture of Christ's intention for us and what Christ really wants to do for you and me when we keep His commandments. Thank you for watching this DVD.